What are the biggest secrets you would learn after picking the brains of 50 internet millionaires? What kind of funnels did they set up to run their businesses? What type of traffic sources are they using? What are their biggest secrets for success? And how can you duplicate their secrets for success inside of your own business? Well, today's special guest has the answers. He had the privilege of interviewing more than 50 internet millionaires, and he is going to reveal the big patterns for success and secrets that he learned. If you too are looking to make it big on the internet, then pay close attention to the golden nuggets revealed in today's episode. Cue the music. Welcome to the Marketing Podcast Party, the only marketing podcast where you and I party together while discovering big, bold, and wildly successful marketing ideas that can transform your business. I'm your host, Daniel Din. Let's get this party started. Yeah, let's go. Oh, man. In today's episode, we are going to discover some big ideas to make it big on the internet. And did you know that back in 2009, I also hit it big with the internet? It's one of my many stories and secrets I share in my new book, Ideas That Influence. So after this episode, if you'd like even more big, bold, and wildly successful marketing ideas, then I want to give you a copy of my book for free. Ideas That Influence comes with an amazing box experience, and you can get both the book and the box experience today for free. You just pay shipping and handling costs. To grab your copy, visit bigideasbox.com. Once again, that's bigideasbox.com for your free plus shipping copy of Ideas That Influence, the book, and the interactive box experience. And now it's time to introduce my very special guest. Today's guest is a funnel expert and a man of God. He has a background in finance, and he loves building funnels so much that he decided to work on a new and amazing project. He set out to interview as many 2 Comma Club winners that he could to discover their best secrets. He's been revealing the secrets he learned on his new podcast called the 2 Comma Club Podcast, where he interviews 7 to 9-figure business owners to understand their best secrets and marketing strategies. He agreed to come on today and reveal some of the biggest patterns for success that he has uncovered. I'm super excited to have on today's show John Marsch. There it is. John Marsch, let's go.
How's it going? Thanks for having me. Really grateful for the opportunity. It was awesome, man. Yeah, I'm hyped up. I'm ready to go. This is going to be fun.
Amazing. Well, so John, we'd love to start with your story. Like, what got you to where you are today? I mean, we've been hanging out together in some of the same groups. We were part of a daily mastermind call for a while there. And, but to be honest, John, I don't know your full story. Like, what got you to where you're at today?
Yeah, I think the long and short of that answer is kind of just following God's path and purpose for me, to be completely honest. Like, when I originally set out in my adult life to be an adult, I had a finance degree for 4 years that cost me $110,000 in student loans. And so right out the gate, I had to ask the question, how do you make that kind of money, right? Because I have these massive bills behind me that at 22 years old, I got to figure out how to pay them. So everybody told me up to that point, like, you got to get a good job and all that stuff. And I'm like, that's great. So I went and I did that. I got a good job working in a private bank. When I was at this private bank, the thing that was unique about my experience was that I worked in the wealth management department, and part of my job every day working on these securities-based lines of credit was to understand how it is that all of these people got to the wealth that they got. And for your reference, the lines of credit that we worked on were on average $8 million. So their bank accounts had to be somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 12 million in order to even qualify for that. So on a literal daily basis for 2 years right out of college, I'm being subjected to all of these accounts that range from anywhere between about 150,000 up to 150 million. And that was what I was doing on a daily basis. So I'm like, wow, like it really cracked my mind to understand like, okay, it's very possible to have a significant amount of money, a great lifestyle and all that. But the next question I was left with was like, where are these people? Like, and what are the trends that they're all doing that's the same? And after being there for 2 years and reading all these different origin stories of how all these people made this wealth, there was one common thing that they all had in common. And it was the fact that they were in business. And it was pretty crazy to think that. So from there, I basically had this lens where I was looking at the world like, okay, like, I don't know who's out there in terms of who has this money and where they're at, but like they have something that I don't have, which is knowledge about how to do this. And I want to learn that. And so I basically just like primed the lenses that I was looking at the world through to be open to finding those people that I know exist because I've been working on their lines of credit for forever. And about a year and a half after I quit that job, I was going through some relatively difficult things in life. Don't need to dive into all that right now, but ultimately I wanted to change my environment on social media. And I found this theme page that basically gave me a list of like 40 to 50 entrepreneurs that I should follow, of which one of them was a gentleman by the name of Tanner Chittister. And so he is a 2 Comma Club C award winner, which means that he's made either, 25, 50, 75, or $100 million in his business, which in his case, it is 100 million to my knowledge. So with that being said, his team actually reached out to me on Instagram after following him to try to sell me their program. And it was at that time that I became aware of these 2 Comma Club awards, right? And for everybody who's listening, what it is there's the 2 Comma Club award for making $1 million in revenue in your business, the 2 Comma X for 10 million, and then the C, as I alluded to a moment ago. So once I started realizing this, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is a symbol that I can see very visibly all over the internet to showcase all of the people who have the answers that I need to know. What is the through line that connects all of them? And from there, I came across Clickfunnels, which is the company that is a software company and education company that basically teaches people online marketing and things of that nature. So I bought a ticket to Funnel Hacking Live, and from there we were kind of off to the races.
You know what? With everything is that, the most mind blowing thing about everything that you're saying right now is that you got gifted with a special paradigm, and then I was like, hold up, money magnet alert! We got a money magnet right here. Like, let's go. That shift, that paradigm, the way of looking at the world, because you were fresh out of college looking at people's bank accounts, and that's just gotta like be like, what? Like, I'm looking at this person's bank account and I'm seeing over $100 million in this bank account. And how much were you making at the time, John? When
about 50,000, but
50,
that was just from the job, and I was investing on the side as well, which we can dive into later.
There you go. So you're making 50 and you're looking at people's bank accounts with over 100 million, and part of your job is to like help these people. And you're like, man, this is a big mindset shift. What's going on? And then you're like, well, the commonality is that these people are in business. These people have businesses. This is what's getting them the wealth. This is the engine that's bringing people to everything. Now, some people might be wondering, like, the inspiration for today's gear, right? And that this goes hand in hand with what we're wearing today. So what's the purpose of our party gear for today on today's marketing podcast party episode?
Well, I think it's twofold. First and foremost, it's kind of, St. Patty's Day themed. And when you think about that, you think about like the leprechaun and the pot of gold and all that fun stuff. And so really it resembles like the conversation around money more specifically. But then also we have St. Patty's Day coming up in a few days. So good timing.
There you go. Good timing. 100%. In addition to that, so me specifically, lots of people don't know this, but so I decided to throw on my green USPS shirt, and I have these fond memories of my wife and I recently married in 2000, like around 2007. We had a pretty successful eBay store, and we would daily be going and dropping off packages at USPS, and that was one of the ways that we made money back in 2007. So, I mean, today we're going to dive into some big internet marketing secrets, internet, not always internet marketing related, but people that use the internet as a tool in order to grow their businesses fast. But it was one of the big things for me back in 2007 that helped me really get excited about the opportunities in the world. And I want you to speak on that, John, from your experience. It's my opinion that people severely underestimate the amount of opportunity that we have in front of us. From your paradigm, from everything that you learned in the finance industry, and now everything that you're doing with your podcast and with funnels, what's the real like amount of opportunity that's out there? Like I think people are underestimating the amount of opportunity.
100%. I couldn't agree anymore. To put it lightly, I think it's really like infinite. And I literally mean that. And the reason I say that is because, you know, if you follow Myron Golden and stuff and a lot of other industry leaders who are in this space and they speak through biblical principles, there's a lot of stuff that they hit on that basically highlights the fact that this world is abundant. And when you think about how much money is actually out there, it's in the trillions of dollars, right? Like, it's already hard to conceptualize $1 million for most people, but then you have to add 3 zeros to get to $1 billion, and then you have to add 3 more to get to $1 trillion, and there's multiple trillions of dollars out there. So there's like an infinite amount of this, and a lot of the opportunities out there come in a lot of different ways, but I think the biggest thing is just putting yourself in the environments where you are being subjected to the conversations of how to capitalize these opportunities, right? Listening to podcasts like this and other ones like mine and a ton of other people who are out there, the content that you can consume online and all of that, it really highlights there's a lot of investment opportunities to multiply your money, like whether it's through the stock market or in real estate. There's opportunities to sell stuff online, to be a content creator. Like you see a lot of YouTubers out there who are really successful. And there's just, there's a ton, to put it lightly.
Wow. Wow. That was gold. Man, I tell you, John, repeat that. The amount of opportunities are what?
Infinite
Amount of opportunities for making money in the world today. Infinite amount. Like how is that? Like logistically, how is it infinite?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the way you need to think about making money comes from the idea of adding value to people, right? The easiest way to add value to somebody is to identify a problem that they have and then offer to solve it. And if you offer to solve it, there's likely going to be an exchange of money in that capacity. So when you think about this and you put it into really simple context, right? Maybe you have a neighbor where you live that has a dog, and maybe in this illustration, they're a little more elderly and they don't necessarily want to always have to go out and walk their dog to let it use the restroom and stuff. Maybe you could go offer to take the dog to the bathroom and take care of that situation for them for, a small monthly retainer, right? Where you're just on call like that, or mowing your neighbor's lawn or wherever you're at in the world. Maybe there's snow, and offer to, plow their driveway and all these other things. These are really small examples of it. But what's really fascinating about this concept is these are examples of solving small problems for people, which will get you paid in a proportionate capacity. But if you are able to focus on solving bigger problems for individuals who will receive a decent amount of money from that problem being solved, like a simple example would be one of the episodes that we shot on my podcast was episode number 4, a gentleman by the name of Austin Medlin. And the one problem that he helps people solve is the idea of getting a higher closing rate for their business, right? Yeah. So holding everything else the same, the number of leads, the price of the product and everything, if he can just come in and help them move the needle from, say, 10% to 30%, they literally triple their business like that, right?
Yeah.
And all he has to do is come in and offer to solve that one problem. And if this business is doing $1 million and now they're doing 3, they just made $2 more million. And all of a sudden he can walk away with a commission that looks easily like 6 figures. You know, it's crazy.
100%. I like to use the example of going to Mars. So, John, if you had the money, magic bank account, okay, and you were like, you can actually safely right now go to Mars and check it out, a vacation to Mars, 3-day excursion. You're going to absolutely love it. Now, remember, you've got the unlimited bank account. How much would you be willing to pay for this service?
Seeing that it's, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Like,
Yeah.
how much would you pay?
I mean, seeing that it's really rare and how little I know about space travel and things of that nature, personally, I would prefer to pay a lot more. Reason being is because I know that I'm giving the person the resources financially to ensure my safety as I go from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And then more than that, helping to build whatever infrastructure is there to receive me as I'm there for this 3-day vacation. So
Awesome. So like a price tag, what would be the price? Like what would you conceptualize that you would need to pay for this super safe trip, 3-day excursion to Mars?
To be completely honest, I'd love to do a little research to answer this question, but I will go with somewhere in the ballpark of like, if money is literally no problem, I'd pay $1 billion, like a literal $1 billion for this to ensure that it's like 100% safe, you know?
Yeah, 100%. If money wasn't an issue. And I think this ties into your concept of infinite wealth possibilities, because when we think about experience, and so basically John's saying he will put $1 billion price tag if he had unlimited funds to potentially go on this 3-day excursion to Mars. Okay, amazing. That's one service. A safe 3-day excursion to Mars that in the future is a possibility. We have people working on these types of problems. And so when it comes to infinite amount of growth potential, infinite amount of income potential, I think this is where we start to see the possibilities, because that is one service where it's like, wow, somebody out there is willing to pay $1 billion for that. Now, what if we all got to the point in our businesses and on planet Earth where we all are able to provide such a massive amount of value that we have $1 billion offers? What happens wealth-wise, John, if you look at how GDP works, is if I'm exchanging $1 billion with you and you're exchanging $1 billion with me, and let's say 100 other service providers are also, we're exchanging amongst ourselves these $1 billion offers, the GDP, if 100 of us are all exchanging amongst ourselves $100 billion offers, the GDP per capita is $100 billion for that year if that all happens within a 1-year period. And so I could enjoy $100 billion of value potentially from 100 other providers. And if I have the kick-ass service that people absolutely love that also provides that $1 billion worth of value potentially, then the same thing, I'm sharing value with them, they're sharing value with me. And I think that's what happens when the income potential becomes infinite, unlimited, where it really is kind of like a switch in our brains where it's like, oh, wait a second. What is the most value I could provide? There are $1 billion companies out there. Okay. There's companies that have, their valuation has exceeded $1 trillion. So what would it look like if I was also a $1 billion company? What kind of value would I provide? And what value would others in the world be providing to me if there were enough people out there providing that type of value? And when we all elevate together, the GDP rises and we all win big. I think of the poor in the world today. I think of the homeless who have cell phones. They are holding their sign while talking to their friend on their cell phone. They have access to all of the world's information in the palm of their hand while holding that homeless sign. The poor amongst us are also rich in many ways. And I think that's what happens when we start to think of these infinite wealth possibilities. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think what it does is if you think about our current day and age, right? There's a ceiling and a floor for like the possibilities. When you think of people like the Kardashians and other big names, Jeff Bezos, etc., Elon Musk, so on and so forth, no matter how you feel about them, they all probably have access to what we would consider to be the ceiling of the life that we could have at this current time in terms of access to anything and everything. And in terms of what it looks like for the individuals who are on the worst side, I would assume it would probably be the homeless in this capacity because they aren't even in a place to have a home. They might still have the ability to, at the end of the day, after begging for some money, go be able to afford a nice air-conditioned room at the end of the night. They might be able to go afford like a hot meal after getting some donations and things of that nature. And it's like back in the day, a few hundred years ago or a few thousand or however you want to put it,
Yeah.
There wasn't just a McDonald's around the corner that you could just go get a hot hamburger from, and all this is.
If you were poor a few thousand years ago, you're dead.
Yeah, exactly. So we basically, as we increase that mindset and those capacities and we raise the GDP, as you're saying, like the whole ceiling to floor thing raises, and ultimately it helps everyone on the whole scale, if you will, increases the value of life, I guess is how I'd put it.
100%. Things are heating up. Things are getting good. Things are about to get crazy because we haven't even jumped into the topic yet, which is everything that John is going to reveal after his interviews with over 50 internet millionaires. So now let's jump in, John, if it's all right with you, to today's topic. I mean, all of that with mindset, I think that really helped us to actually prepare. And I think we kind of inadvertently already uncovered some of the secrets that you've learned from some of these internet millionaires. But specifically the topic, John, for today is the internet millionaire success stories, what you learned from the 50 internet millionaires that you interviewed, the patterns, the big secrets. I mean, I'm going to shut up now because I'm excited for this. I'm ready to take notes. Let's see what you have for us so that we can all improve our businesses. What did you learn, John?
Awesome. So I've learned a lot. I'll put it that way. And I'll try to break it all down into some simple takeaways here. I'd like to preface this with the fact that you can make $1 million, but it doesn't mean that you have $1 million, right? Like there's a lot of businesses out there. I think of like restaurants, for example. And the way that I look at all these different businesses is from not necessarily the revenue standpoint, which is like the money they make, but from the profit standpoint. Because if you're going to sit here and work for an entire year and you bring home $1 million, but at the end of the year, you can't even pay yourself 10 grand, like, I don't necessarily think it was a great idea. It's like, congratulations, you're a 7-figure entrepreneur, but you're broke, you know? And it's like, one of the things that drove me...
about the difference there with basically grossing $1 million versus profiting $1 million?
Yeah, so the biggest takeaway is understanding the relationship between your income versus your expenses.
Yeah.
And so like somebody who has a 6-figure job, if all of their expenses meet what their income is after tax, like they're paycheck to paycheck, right? In a business, it works the same way. And so like you could be making 7 million, but if you have to pay your property mortgage, your actual own income and like all these other factors, it can put you at like 7 figures to 7 figures in income and expenses, and you end up breaking even, and you're basically living paycheck to paycheck, or more specifically, sale to sale. And it makes it pretty hard to scale and honestly be able to sleep at night. So to dive into the internet marketing side of things.
I got to pause you there real fast.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that because you have this secret tool in your back pocket that most people don't know about? Are you saying that you kind of saw that, not with everybody, but with some of the people that you interviewed, because of your finance background, you kind of saw that like they might be grossing $1 million or $2 million or $5 million, but they are cash poor. Are you saying that you actually saw that amongst a few of them?
So I don't know exactly what their expenses are, and I don't know exactly what their profits are. I know what their revenues are. So I can say that according to the award that they've received, they've either generated $1 million, 10 million or more. But with that said, what I understand after having interviewed them and understanding their business models is that depending on their strategy for generating the revenue, will be able to determine how much of a profit margin they probably have. Now, it can range significantly in these different business models, but I'll say, for example, one of the key metrics that I look at when I talk to these business owners that I'm trying to determine for myself, the biggest thing I think that impacts profitability is predominantly going to be fulfillment, right? So what fulfillment looks like is like if you have, a restaurant, part of your costs now are you have to pay for the place itself, property taxes, whatever else, insurance. You have to pay for the food that you're putting there. You have to pay for staff and all this stuff so you can turn around and sell a $10 meal, right? Now you have all of these things in here expense-wise, and it can make it really hard to turn a profit. So in this space, one of what I would consider to be more or less these heavy fulfillment services is the agency model, right? This is a done-for-you model that as you continue to bring on more clients, it ends up requiring you to have a bigger team on the backside to actually fulfill on these. But it's very dependent on who your market audience is, right? Because some of these people have really great strategies where they're only going after, 7-9 figure plus, but it's the agency owners that are going for everyone's sub 7 figures, right? Because in those capacities, they might not be able to pay a retainer that allows you to pay a full team and take a profit, right? It might just be a break-even kind of situation. And so it really depends on their overall strategy, if that makes sense.
Right. So basically on a simplistic model, if let's say I have 5 clients in my agency, I'm charging them $2,000 a month. So this is only a 6-figure business example, but at the end of the day, so 5 clients, $2,000, but I'm providing marketing services. We're running their Facebook and Instagram ads. We're running their Google ads, etc. If I did that all myself, then I could take home about 10,000. But if I have 2 employees, 2 decent employees that help me manage and get results for people, that might already cost me 10,000. And so I'm at break even. Is that kind of what you're saying here?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, dude, this is good stuff. I played a lot of songs here because this is really, really, really good stuff. So there's a big range here, different types of businesses. Some of them are succeeding, some of them are not. Mind blown. Let's go. Amongst the 7-figure winners, we have a big range here. Like some of them are they're not taking home that much. And then some of them are taking home a lot. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, who's taking home a lot?
Well, I think the easiest way to determine that is looking at it from the perspective of what are they offering and what does that fulfillment look like? Because that's where a lot of their costs are. So when you hear somebody who's selling an ebook versus a physical book, right? What can end up happening is you end up having more costs associated with a physical book than you do with an ebook. So the profit margin just on that is already influenced.
Yeah.
But then there's the other metrics that you have to look at further behind the scenes, which is if they do have a physical book, are they actually converting more as a lifetime client, right? Exactly. Yeah. Versus if they have a digital book, they might look at it once and then it's lost. But that has product placement value, right? So now it's sitting there in their living room, and every time they walk in, they're like, man, I got a gold nugget from that. I got to see what that next program is and move from there, right?
Yeah.
And so this kind of breaks down the idea of a value ladder. And what I've seen is that a lot of the individuals who create a value ladder, it generally consists of about 4 different pieces, right? So for anybody who's listening, a value ladder is basically the idea of having multiple offers that solve the same problem for the same audience It just fulfills in a different kind of capacity to meet people where they're at. So for example, if you had, somebody that you're trying to help solve a problem and they literally don't have any money, well, you have something for free that you can do. It could be like a podcast like we're doing, right? They can listen in for free, get some value from it, get some gold nuggets, and it helps them in that capacity. Now, maybe down the road, when they're actually in the capacity to be able to invest a little bit of money, you might have a book. And now your book can actually teach them more in depth on the topic, and they can do it themselves, right? So they have the free part of the value ladder. Then they have a low ticket offer, which is something that, call it under like about $200, $100, right? Anything under there. A lot of people use challenge framework model, webinars, other things of this nature to provide value in a quick 5-day kind of scenario. And then the next thing that is really key for a lot of business owners, and I really want to emphasize this, is monthly recurring revenue. Like if you're a business owner and you don't currently have monthly recurring revenue, you need to draw out some time on your calendar to sit back and do some visionary work and figure out how you can get that in your business, because that's the lifeblood of your business. And that is one of the biggest determining factors about what allows a company to scale or not. And the reason I say that is because if you can rely on money coming in, let's say you have one employee and they cost you $5,000 a month and you have $10,000 in monthly recurring revenue, right, you know that they're going to get paid their $5,000 every month without thinking about it. And then at the same time, you yourself have $5,000 to work with in operating costs or revenue. So something very important to touch on there. And then the final thing a lot of these people do is higher ticket programs, right? This could be $2,000 or more that allow them to get a big influx of cash that they can use to reinvest in different capacities. So the way that I view this, after having done these 50 plus different interviews, is your free material is the best way that you can build relationships with people, and it's really great marketing tactics. The low ticket offers are what you're doing to qualify the people who are actually willing to help themselves solve the problem, right? Because I got this from Brian Adamson, who was recently on the podcast, and he basically elaborated to the point that like you might be able to help people with a specific problem, but you have to help the people who want to help themselves as well as having the problem. Because if they don't want to, then you're wasting your time and their time. So with that said, it helps you to pre-qualify and understand who those actual buyers are. And then from there, the monthly recurring revenue piece is how you're going to fund any expansions that you have in your business going forward. And then where you're going to be able to take home some big numbers is the high ticket program. And in that capacity, you're also able to serve people the best there as well, because you have more resources to do so.
So are you telling me out of these 50 internet millionaires that a portion of them may have made potentially mistakes, not really having the MRR set up, the monthly recurring revenue, and not really having the high ticket set up, but they're like focusing on front end that maybe got them to gross that $1 million or $2 million or $5 million, but that could be the reason why they are kind of cash poor, because they don't have the MRR and the high end offer?
100%. I think the way that I see it is like a lot of entrepreneurs, what we really want at the end of the day is like time freedom. Like financial freedom would be nice as well, but at the end of the day, we just want to know that we get to wake up and do the thing that we love the next day. The easiest way to do that is either having the cash in your account from high ticket sales that allows you to buy your own time based on whatever your expenses are, or having more monthly recurring revenue than you have in monthly expenses, because then you know every month it's going to be paid. And that's like the big key there.
Dang, this is gold, man. So out of like percentage wise, if you had to guess, out of the 50 internet millionaires, what percentage had the MRR set up and what percentage did not?
If I had to guess off the top of my head, I'm going to guess that probably about 2 in every 3 had it. But what I'd like to emphasize on that is that the effectiveness of the MRR ranges very drastically. So like some people might have MRR and their retention rate is maybe 3 months. And some people might have it for like, they can make a sale and then it goes away like that same month. But then others might have people in there for like years to come. And so it really ranges. And this is where people have to take a lot of time to invest in understanding what their monthly recurring revenue offer is. And then on top of that, understanding how to really balance that retention rate and give people the value that they need from that offer.
Wow. I mean, there's so much to dissect right there. So, like their churn rate is like 1 month for some people. Some the churn rate's 6 months. Some of it it's well years is what what it sounds like. What's the like? Obviously, we want to have our churn rate with our MRR get up to years versus 1 month, right? What's the difference?
Well, it really depends on the fulfillment for the offer, right? So like to give some context to this, some of these offers could be like some people have a course where instead of doing one big lump sum payment as a high ticket program, they might do a monthly payment, right? And so when you think about it in that capacity, somebody's coming there to learn this content like the back of their hand. And then when they're done and they've learned it, they don't need to continue to stay there. So a lot of people actually group this with something that helps increase retention rates is like a community, right? Because now you're surrounded by like-minded people who have the same problem and they want to be able to be involved in that community, and that'll increase retention rate, assuming that you actually run the community like a community. If you're just in there putting people in a Facebook group and not interacting with anybody, like they're going to be gone pretty quick, you know? But if you're actually in there dropping value, helping them to solve the problem, encouraging them in different capacities, like these range anywhere from, I've seen some that are teaching people how to bake cookies to literally like showing them how to invest in real estate and other things of this nature. So they really depend in that capacity. And I think your audience is another really good determining factor of that. Because if you have somebody that has, you know, a small problem, you're going to be able to help them solve it pretty quickly. But somebody who's more complex and wants to continuously buy more real estate, staying plugged into that community might be a better avenue for them to continue to get deals.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a mix of when it comes to the communities and the MRR, you're saying the commonalities for the best monthly recurring revenue. This is pure gold, by the way. So one, the niche. The niche actually matters. If you
100%.
solve a person's problem too fast, then it affects your churn rate. Like they're in, they're out. Hey, my problem solved. No need to keep on paying this $100 a month, $500 a month, whatever it is. And then the second thing, if I'm hearing you right, John, it comes down to leadership, how you're running that community, the tribe that you're building. Some people, let's just be honest, when it comes to the community building aspect of what they're doing, they're lazy. They don't want to interact. They don't want to lead the tribe. And if that's them, then their churn rate might be like super affected by that.
100%. I couldn't agree anymore. One thing I'd love to add to this too is the concept for MRR of the offer being more sticky. Looks like different kinds of offers. So we covered the idea of doing like a course over a monthly, a community. Another thing would be something like software. You know, there might be some software developers that are listening, and like being able to put that into a company and solve a very specific problem for a very specific type of business. You're going to become one of their main operating systems, and they're going to use that on a regular, which will increase retention over time just by the fact that they have to use it for a very long time. So when you think of individuals like Russell Brunson with Clickfunnels and things of that nature, like it becomes the front end part of their online business. And so they're going to keep that for the endurance, the long run of their business. And if they're in business for 10 years, you've got them for 10 years. If they're in business for 60 days, you got them for 2 months. So
love it. Yeah. Russell Brunson talks about the pain of disconnect. So if we're gonna turn this into a masterclass for MRR, which isn't the purpose of this, but if it was, it would be the 3 elements for really high retention rates with your monthly recurring revenue would be 1, the niche totally matters. 2, the leadership of the community, 100%. It's big. You have to have that dialed in. And then number 3, you just said it, John. Repeat it one more time.
making it a sticky offer.
Making it a sticky offer, having that pain of disconnect embedded into the offer where it actually kind of hurts me. It felt like hosting, like web hosting. That's why people love web hosting companies, because if I stop paying my web hosting bill, all of a sudden my website goes down. So that pain of disconnect, if I need my website to run, is super high. And that's one of the first bills that I'm paying if like my website gets shut down, right?
100%.
That was gold right there. That was gold. Oh my gosh. This was not meant to be a masterclass on MRR, but I think you just, within 1 minute, turned this into a masterclass on MRR.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was gold. All right. So we got one more big thing, because you said, all right, a lot of these 50 millionaires, the Internet Millionaires, they've got the free level down pat. They've got their front end offers down pat. 66%, 2/3 of them have the MRR dialed in. The ones that do in a really healthy way, they've got a healthier business. The ones that don't have it dialed in, not so much, right? They're a little bit more cash poor from your perception. Every business is different. We're not 100% sure, but what about the last element, the back end, the high ticket offers on the back end? So speak to that, please.
So there's a very large range here. The two best examples I have of this are, first and foremost, there's a framework that I want to discuss after I'm done explaining this high ticket thing really quick, because I think this is the biggest and best trend that I've seen across all the interviews. Okay. But depending on the traffic source that you use for these offers, if you're using something like cold DMs on Instagram, for example, you don't need to spend as much money in ad spend to actually get people to come and purchase it. So you don't need to have a really high price tag to get a $2,000 profit. If you're just selling a course and doing like 5 coaching calls, which I've seen done before, you can sell it for anywhere between $2,000 to, literally tens of thousands of dollars, and in some cases, maybe even hundreds. The biggest, highest priced offer that I've heard out there so far, up until Funnel Hacking Live that we just attended, Russell Brunson's $1 million offer, was previously Myron Golden's $1 million offer. Yeah. So I don't know all of the exact details to this, but this is what I've heard through the grapevine, is the idea that he has what's called a VIP day. And it is my understanding, and I can be wrong on this, that it is about an 8-hour day that you get to hang out with him, pick his brain, and be a part of, if he's hosting something in person or going to an event, you get to fly on his private plane with him. You get to be in the room as he does his YouTube live that day alongside a lot of other people in his mastermind and things of that nature. And that one offer, the last time that I heard, was $350,000. So his $1 million offer is a combination of 4 of those bundled into one at a discount of $100,000 a piece. So it makes it $1 million. So these are all of the different creative, like, I guess, the range of the prices associated with these high ticket programs. So as far as the
2,000 to $1 million is what you would consider high ticket range.
Yeah, essentially.
And sometimes it's 5 coaching calls. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's 4 private plane rides.
right.
With 8-hour sessions for $1 million. Let's go. So if I'm hearing you right, John, the when it comes to the mindset, the level of what people think can be a high ticket offer, there's a big range, and we can be a lot more creative with how we do it. And also there's a lot more price flexibility. Is that what you're kind of saying here?
100%. And I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing that determines this is if you put on like the cap of an investor, right? If they're going to spend, let's say your offer is $10,000, right? If they're going to spend $10,000 with you and that's your high ticket offer, at the end of the day, you want to be able to get them about at least 10x that value, right? So if you can get somebody 6 figures worth of value, then you can easily charge them $10,000 for that thing.
Exactly.
Same thing for if you can get them 8 figures worth of value, like Myron, then they can pay 7 figures for that thing, right? And that's kind of what's taking place in that arena. Now, based on that, you need to be very strategic of understanding, A, who you're helping. Do they actually have access to that cash to be able to pay for that? And then B, are they willing to? And then the third thing is like, do you actually have a system in place that gets them that 10x value, right? Because the worst thing you want to do is accept that money from somebody, not get them the results, and then have a credit card charge back in your name kind of poo-pooed on. So, yeah.
It's like the $1 billion offer. You were willing to pay that $1 billion for that 3-day trip to space to go hang out at Mars for 3 days because you know that it's safe. But then if you die on that 3-day trip because it wasn't safe, then we're good. Then you and your descendants are and your family members are going to have some major beef with me.
Oh yeah,
for killing you on my 3-day trip to Mars.
Big time.
Oh no, that's the concept here is you got to sell dollars for dimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you can be bold. You can do that $1 million dollar offer. You can do the $1 billion offer. Just make sure that you're providing 10x the value, and then you can feel good about it. If I'm providing you $10 billion worth of value for $1 billion, that is a good deal, right?
Yeah, I think one thing I want to add is a really critical layer to this. The 24th episode I did was with a gentleman by the name of Victor Damasio, and he really did a good job of leaning into the importance of pre-qualifying for high-ticket sales. Because, again, based on that idea that just because somebody has the problem, it doesn't mean they're necessarily willing to do the work to get the results. So if you sell to somebody this really high-ticket program and you are capable of solving their problem, it just requires them to press this one button, and they're not willing to press that one button, well, you're not going to be able to get them the results, and you're going to run into the same problem as if you weren't able to get them the results. So really take the time on the front end to do that pre-qualification and like making sure that they're actually in a position where they're ready to do any work that's required.
Vitor, to the bang. Shout out to Victor Damasio. So fun fact, Pedro Superchi and I, we were part of one of Victor Damasio's first mastermind groups right after he kind of gave up being a lawyer because, well, it was killing his dreams to be a lawyer. Let's just leave it that way. But Victor's a master at helping people with high ticket offers, a master networker as well, and he helped us a lot with what we did down in Brazil. So shout out to Victor Damasio. So check out, you said episode 24 of the podcast.
Yep.
All right. The 2 Comma Club podcast, episode 24. If you want some additional golden nuggets on the high ticket offers with Vitor Damasio, let's go. All right. Sweet. So when it comes to you mentioned a framework, and it sounded like you started to build out that framework a little bit. Did you complete the framework on the high ticket part, or was that just a taste of it right there?
So the framework itself is a holistic marketing strategy for anyone who's getting into business, especially in the online space, or really anywhere. So to give a little preface to this, I found after doing so many interviews and talking to so many people, 3 of the 4 parts of the framework. The 4th part was actually given to me by episode number 9, Mark Stern. He's a 2 Comma Club award winner with a business that's really an interesting and unique one. And I believe you know him. Yep. He does these custom box agency stuff. So
is that why you brought up these episodes so that I would have something to say about my friends?
Well, Mark, it happens to be a part of the story.
We're talking about the box again, Mark. We're talking about the box that people love.
That's awesome. So with that said, I went to an event in Idaho. I think it was 23. Yeah, in 23 probably, or maybe 24. Bottom line is Mark was one of the speakers there, and it was a smaller event, and so he brought everybody a gift, and it's a deck of cards in a box called the Activate deck.
Yep,
and
I've got it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I've also got this one from Mark, 57 hats. If you haven't seen that one yet, that one's a fun one. So anyway.
Definitely. Yeah.
Randomly have all of Mark's stuff right next to me.
It's fantastic. My stuff is over there. I'd have to get up and grab it. But so when you open the box, it's got 4 different prompts to it, right? And these 4 different prompts are the idea of all of the 4 different pieces that you need in order to make your first dollar in your business, in my opinion. I don't know if that's how he's marketing it or whatever, but that is how I see it.
Yeah.
So these 4 prompts are as follows. First and foremost, you have to have one way of getting discovered. How are people finding out that you exist? Second thing you need is you need a way to build relationships with these people and actually get them to know, like, and trust you, right? And then the third thing is you need some way of capturing their contact information because in reality, one, offer to somebody is probably not going to convert. It's about 80% or more of sales that take place after the 5th point of contact.
Right.
So you need to be able to get their contact information in a strategic way that allows you to continue to build the relationship, follow up with them, and make that offer. And then the 4th piece is like, what are you actually offering, right? So the way that after I came across this framework that I've been conducting the podcast is in a way where I ask them, what is their strategy for each of these 4 pieces? So one of the patterns that I've seen is the fact that everybody not only has an answer to each of these things, but more specifically, they have one answer for each of these things, which is very interesting because, you know, I don't know about you guys, but as I grew up, like my environment showed me the idea that like, in order to have more, you have to be more and you have to do more, right? But more specifically, the do more. In reality, it's actually the opposite. You get more results by doing less, which is really hard to wrap your mind around. But each one of these stories is a perfect example. So the way that episode 5 went with a gentleman by the name of Dave Cousins, he teaches people and helps them solve the problem of repairing their credit, right?
Yeah.
So the way he gets discovered is he creates YouTube videos that are SEO based to help answer the questions about repairing their credit. So that's how they find him. And then by watching the videos, they get to know, like, and trust him because they're watching, 10-minute videos, possibly multiple of them, and etc. And then he has a way of capturing their contact information by providing them with a credit score calculator, and they opt in to get access to this. And then through that and various other follow-up sequences in their emails, he's able to capture their information, build a relationship with them on a deeper level. And then the 4th thing is through those same emails, he promotes his digital products. So all he does once he's done setting up the email sequences, building the calculator and the funnel for it, and building the digital products, is the rest of his life will just look like showing up and making YouTube videos.
Making YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Huh. That is extremely interesting. And it goes along with what Russell says. You're one funnel away, but it's almost like you're one funnel away because there's the value ladder, which is a funnel for each part, right? But overall, you could view it all as one big funnel as well. But when it comes to conceptually, I need one thing to work for my free stuff, like my relationship building stuff. So in my case, it could be my podcast, it could be my YouTube channel, it could be something else. But I just need one to work really, really, really good, is what you're saying. And then moving up the value ladder, I need one funnel where it really gets people excited about, how all the different ways that I can help them, and it helps them maybe solve one big problem. And in my case, that could be my book. Moving up the value ladder I don't have anything for MRR at the moment other than my partnership with Colin DeHaan. We do have people on MRR for the program there. So I guess technically we've got MRR with the coaching, but then that's kind of also the high ticket offer. But we are planning on a SaaS together, top secret project that I can't reveal yet. But that could possibly be like the real MRR aspect. And then the high ticket, we kind of do the coaching, and I do coaching as well in my business as well. But with that being said, conceptually, do I kind of got it? Is that kind of what we're looking at here when it comes to successfully this fast track, I guess, for lack of a better term, for the $1 million internet businesses?
100%. You find the one thing that is naturally suited to you, something you enjoy doing, because in reality, business is a marathon. It's not a sprint. If you hit $1 million, it's not over. You got to keep showing up every day. You got to keep operating. $1 million is not enough to live on for more than a certain period of time, right? And so you have to be smart about it and juggle all these different pieces and parts. And in that, since it's a marathon, you have to find that one thing that you enjoy doing and showing up every day that you would do without even getting paid for it. Because if you're on that kind of level, you're going to be able to do this forever, right? And so for me, it's podcasting, and it might be the same for you, right? And so getting on podcasts, talking with cool people, having a great time, we can show up for that all day, every day, right? But for others, it might be sitting behind a camera without talking to a single person and just creating content in that respect, like YouTube or something, right? And for others, maybe they don't even want to do any of that stuff. They don't want to be a content creator. So instead what they do is maybe they partner with somebody who is a content creator, and then they just run ads and they guide traffic by spending money, right? And so there's a lot of different ways to do the traffic game, and a lot of different ways to build relationships with people. But the big key takeaway is you find what works for you so you can do it like a marathon.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, through iteration, you're going to get better at it. And that's why it's a marathon, because like in the beginning, it's an exponential curve, right? It'll be nothing for quite a while, and then eventually you'll peak and it'll just go straight up. And so like getting those reps in is really the key to it. And being able to, as Russell Brunson calls it, endure long enough to get noticed is like the biggest key to that.
Endure long enough to get noticed. Man, I'll tell you what, that might be the tip that most of us are missing. That was gold. Endure long enough to get noticed. Also, the endurance of doing those things actually are working. I think what happens a lot of times is it takes a little while to find like that thing that you can do over and over again that actually gets results. I'll speak to that really quickly. Okay. So for years, people have been telling me, Daniel, you're really good at talking about marketing. You should do a marketing podcast. Well, here's the thing. Everything I teach is all about breaking through the noise. So I didn't start the podcast that I was going to start years ago because it looked like it was more of the same, and I didn't feel confident that it was going to break through the noise the way that it needed. And so I was like, oh man, like, what am I going to do? And then one day I figure it out, and then I'm like, oh, like this, like if I turn it into like a party, then people are going to like that. And it's starting to work. And so when last FHL, we were both hanging out, and I don't know if I told you this, John, but this is true. So I was dressing up in my marketing podcast party gear every single day, and I was getting a lot of attention and eyeballs and compliments. And I felt, for the first time in my life, I felt like a pretty woman. I'm being honest with you. I was like, wow, people are looking at me and complimenting me. I feel like a pretty woman. And I've never felt like that. I'm like, this must be kind of what it feels like to be a pretty woman. Now that I'm saying this out loud, and now that this is going out to the interwebs, I'm like, should I have just said that? I don't know. But like I'm being honest with myself. Like this is how it worked. And let's be honest, John, you and I were just normal looking white guys, but we're dressed up in party gear, and like, it makes it easier to stop the scroll because we are getting a little bit of attention with the way we're dressed today, right? And so it took me a while to finally figure out the thing, not only that I can wake up and do every single day and week, but also the thing that actually will get traction. And I think it's overlaying those two things, because I can wake up every day and shoot YouTube videos, but that doesn't mean that every single day I'm waking up and shooting YouTube videos that actually get traction. But when I can find the magic formula with that thing that actually also gets traction, that I can wake up to every single day, I think that is directly related to the one funnel away concept, where we have to go out and we have to test 5 things, 10 things, 15 things, and we're trying to find that perfect combination where it lines up. I can do it every day, I like it, and it gets traction, and then we're all in, and then everything can kind of start to take off.
100%. And I think that's kind of what that idea of the enduring long enough to get noticed thing is because like you might be enduring and you might be showing up and making those YouTube videos, but you haven't figured out how to get the traffic yet, right? You haven't gotten the traction in that capacity, but like through repetition and showing up every day, you give yourself the space to figure it out. And then you will. And on top of that, in the process, you get better with every iteration. And when you do find the one thing that clicks, it all comes together and the whole thing is better off for it.
100%. Fail forward until you find that one thing that works.
Yep.
Oh man, so we could go for another hour. But this was gold, John. Thank you so much. I think I played the mind blown music enough times. Um, you dropped some real golden nuggets, golden boulders, like my friends like to say. Luis and Luis like to say golden boulders. I really want to steal it from them and just start saying golden boulders. So, like,
Oh, if you quote them, no harm, no foul.
content is profit. Golden boulders drop today with John Marsch. John, what kind of like you've got the podcast? Remind us one more time about the podcast. You also have something to share with us. So,
Yeah.
what you got for us? Where can we get more of these golden boulders?
First of all, I want to say thank you so much for having me today. What an honor to be on this awesome podcast. I love the unique twist. The music's awesome, keeps everybody lively and paying attention, which is great. So in terms of where people can get more involved in the stuff we have going on, you can check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts is what it is. On Spotify and Apple Podcasts, it's under the 2 Comma Club podcast with the number 2. And then on YouTube and Instagram, John Marsch. On Instagram, it's john.marsch. That's where I'm most active if you want to follow along with everything that we have going on. I post when I'm doing podcasts with people and things of that nature on my stories all the time, and then we put our trailers up there as well. So the unique thing that we do is you don't have to go through and spend the tens of hours watching all these different podcasts. We actually go through and we take the entire transcript of all of the podcast episodes. We plug it into AI and we have it help us distill it down to some of the most important things. And then we read it over to make sure that we are getting the best gold nuggets from it. And so we turn all of that into a newsletter that's a quick, easy read for all the readers. So that way they can get the best tips from these 7 to 9 figure entrepreneurs. So you can find that at the 2ccnewsletter.com. Again, that is 2, the number 2, ccnewsletter.com.
The number 2, not TWO, 2, the number 2, ccnewsletter.com. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, John. Let's cue the music. Thank you all for joining us in this episode of the Marketing Podcast Party. Please share this episode with your friends, family, and business partners. Also, remember that the party continues with your free copy of Ideas That Influence, the book, and the interactive box experience. I wrote the book and created the box experience to help you with even more wildly successful marketing ideas. That's right, John's got one too. Let's go. Head on over to bigideasbox.com to grab your copy. You'll get your copy for free. You just pay shipping and handling. Once again, that's bigideasbox.com for your free plus shipping copy of Ideas That Influence. I'm Daniel Din. This is the Marketing Podcast Party. And I'll see you in the next episode.